I'm not here today to explain away or make excuses for my wrongdoing.
It's a stressful situation when you're sitting there and you have all these people looking at you and you're basically telling some of the unpretty parts of your life story.
Rather, I'm here to ask you to help me to gain the opportunity to be a valued member of Washington society in the future.
And you're asking for forgiveness.
This is my dad. I think he was in 8th grade. And now you know where I get it from. Red hair, blue eyes, and freckles.
I'm Dan Ague, A-G-U-E.
This is my dad holding me when I was a baby. There's probably like maybe 10 pictures altogether I have from when I was a kid. This is the only picture I have of my mom and dad when I was that young.
I'm Starcia Ague's dad. That's my baby girl. I love her with all my heart. If I had to chop my arm off for her, I would.
I'm Lieutenant Stevens with Tumwater Police. Have to advise you're being audio and videotaped, okay?
I did my first hit of methamphetamines in 1986, and I didn't stop till 2004. You know, so you do the math.
I would say a good 75–80% of our crime is driven by drug use.
I did it every day, 10 times a day, and I liked it.
Whether it's burglaries, home invasion, vehicle prowls, thefts.
And you got to have more to get up to go to work. You know, and then you get home from work and you're tired, so you do some more, so you stay up all night, so you gotta have more to go to work, so you can work longer to make more money, so you can buy more dope.
They had statistics when I worked undercover narcotics that there was a dope grow or drug house every square mile.
And then eventually it's like, why am I even working? I could just sell some and get this much for free.
Sometimes we'll take a drug house out and it'll be gone, and it takes some time for another one to reappear in that same area. But there's usually another one going anyway somewhere else.
Get into the right circle and it's, oh wow, I can get this much for that price and I can make this much money? Oh no, I ain't working.
My mom's a prostitute. My dad cooked dope my whole life. My cousins are all addicts and in and out of foster care or with men that beat them.
I'll tell you straightforward that I arrested both her mom and her father several times for being involved in narcotics.
My family, what happens at home stays at home.
You know, we tell her, look, we smoke this stuff. If you tell those guys we smoke this, we're gonna go to jail and you're gonna get taken away. So don't tell nobody that we smoke this stuff.
It's difficult in one end where you're trying to help these kids and pull them out of an environment that's not changing, but because of the resources, there's just not an ability to handle all of the onslaught of children that are affected by this drug scourge.
My first good memory or my first memory?
Your first memory.
My parents fighting. My dad beating at my mom.
We split up and I went to Detroit for a while because that's where most of my family's at. And then I came back here a few years later. Starcia was 4, I think, or 5.
We lived in homeless shelters, we lived in our car, we lived in all the Section 8 housing.
This has been put out in studies, but a lot of the drug users, they lose their parental, I guess, emotion or their parental drive.
I just know that my mom wasn't only smoking weed anymore. She started not coming home for days at a time and would leave me at whoever's house she was at.
When Starcia was 9, she was a living babysitter, and her sisters were like, I don't know, a little tiny baby with no hair and barely walking, you know, and both of them in diapers.
I have 3 younger siblings.
And Starcia running around doing everything, changing diapers, bottles, you know.
She's still an addict, and she still doesn't care about her kids, and she's still on welfare, and she still never had a legit job. She hasn't changed any.
It's like anybody in addiction, they forget about everything but what they want. And so the kids are left alone. There's not what I would call basic nurturing. There's no direction.
It took about 6 or 8 months of her mom and I going around and around, but she finally gave in and let Starcia come live with me. Which, now that I look at it, probably wasn't such a good idea since I was manufacturing methamphetamines.
When I moved in with my dad, it wasn't really talked about, but it was very clear what was happening. I mean, it blew up in our kitchen before. How do you really explain that?
Starcia never seen any of that stuff. You know, the way they make me out to be is this terrible ogre, you know, manufactured methamphetamines in the bathtubs and the sinks, but if you go back and look at the police reports, they didn't find anything in the house that pertained to drugs except for syringes and a little bit of drug residue locked in a safe.
The bottom line, her dad was a meth manufacturer and her mom was a user, and just a horrible environment. So statistically, they tend to follow that same path and destroy their life because they have no support in that environment.
I mean, when I first moved with my dad, I slept in the living room, and people come in and out all day and all night. So it wasn't like trafficking was hidden at all.
It doesn't take rocket scientists to figure all that out. And like I said, she's no dummy.
And they're not like normal people. They're clearly tweakers. Leave their kids in the car. They only care about themselves.
Anytime anybody come to the house, she'd charge them $1 to let them know that I was there, and then she's like, yeah, he's here. Well, we paid you $1. Well, if you want to see him, it's $5.
I knew what they were doing, and I figured out a way to make money off of it or hustle them. I didn't care. I figured if they were coming for drugs, the least they could do is give me money. And I was going to pay for myself to go to school. I was going to go to college.
When I enrolled her in school and stuff, the school was like, well, she's failing everything. And I'm like, what? How can that be?
You have to remember, too, moving in with my dad, I had already been to every elementary school in Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, Tenino.
I kind of made up a rule, too, when she wasn't doing so good. I told her if she got straight A's, pretty much do whatever you want.
I think his intention was good, to making me have good grades.
3 or 4 months after she lived with me, she was basically a straight A student. If she got a B, it killed her.
But it's also just another way so that CPS and other people wouldn't be involved and nosy in his life.
When I first met Starcia, I was working undercover narcotics.
My dad intimidated a lot of people, so not many people, especially authority figures, would even come close to me just because of my last name.
A girlfriend I was going out with, her dad rode motorcycles with Dawn. And somehow Starcia met Dawn through her.
Every time that she had a place that was safe to be, or felt that she was safe, she was a straight A student, go to school. It's usually when the family life fell apart, then she drifted away.
And then our house got raided a couple times, and the biggest time was when his bail was $20,000 cash only, and they bailed him out, and then told me he'd come back for me, and he never did.
I think 2001 I got busted manufacturing methamphetamines.
Because they were cooking meth, and it's all on the walls in your house and everything else. There's traces of amphetamines in my system. So they charged my dad with child endangerment for that.
She moved in with my little brother. And from there, she moved in with some other people.
I would run into Starcia on the street off and on, and Starcia basically was one of those juveniles that was 14, almost 15 years old. They kind of get lost in the system.
Oh, and this is homecoming my freshman year at River Ridge High School. I was in, where was I? Oh, I was in foster care.
She had left her mom and her dad, or had been taken away and put in a foster home, but the foster parents were now supposedly using and dealing narcotics.
At that point in time, you know, Starcia was pretty rebellious about who she wanted to stay with and who she didn't want to stay with.
We wrote a warrant into the foster home and ended up arresting the parent for the narcotics that were going on there. And at that point, Starcia was removed from the home.
Don Stevens, he, you know, basically told her, look, you don't have to live like this. You don't have to live with these people.
Basically, I know that if there's not some kind of intervention to it, or some kind of ability to step in and try and redirect them, that they're going to fall and they're going to fail.
But as I got older, I realized the more that I didn't want to be like them, the more that I became like them. So I would justify, I'd say, oh, as long as I don't do dope, I could just smoke weed and drink. And I'm like really young, too young to be doing any of that.
When I first met her, she still had the behaviors of, she was on her own survival mode, and she would try and manipulate things and and, you know, work things to her own way.
Because I was mean and angry and beat people up for fun and just so that people wouldn't mess with me.
And so I gave her a business card and told her when she got in trouble to give me a call.
Pretty much as soon as I was out of the picture, she just went ape.
My dad is kind of really well known for selling drugs, and so I guess more than, yeah, I was selling them and delivering them and making money.
I believe that she actually went back to one of her parents. I believe it was her mom, who was also involved in narcotics.
She couldn't stay clean, so they ordered her to go to inpatient treatment in order to get the kids back because all of us had been taken away.
I was on home monitoring. I escaped from home monitoring from the jail because they offered me a deal for 78 months and my guidelines only went up to 60. And I said, you know what? You guys want to do me like this? Then catch me when you can. See ya. I packed up my home monitoring stuff, cut my bracelet off, and I was gone.
He left, and he didn't leave me anything, and or any money or any means to really to do anything. And my mom was in inpatient treatment, and I wasn't even old enough to get a legit job.
Her mom didn't pay the rent. And they went, you know, she got her welfare check or whatever, and they went camping at Miller, Sylvania for 2 weeks. And when they came back, all the stuff was emptied out of the apartment. You know, and the landlord told her, I didn't steal your stuff is fine, it's right here in storage, but you're not getting none of it back till I get my rent money.
The point of going there was to take all their stuff, their drugs and their money and guns, whatever they had. It wasn't supposed to be to hurt anybody.
Because really all Starcia was doing was following in her dad's footsteps or her mom's footsteps. You know, oh, you think you're gonna take our stuff? No, you're not.
I knew it was going to happen. So I really didn't think it was a shock. I was a little bit, I guess, shocked about the crime itself.
She knew the dude went bowling every Thursday or whatever it was and figured, yeah, there's gonna be nobody there. We can go get some of my stuff back.
I had 3 co-defendants. They were all older than me.
My understanding is when Starcia and the other kids went there, they were expecting the place to be vacant.
We were all under the influence of alcohol and smoking weed.
No, the landlord wasn't there. Another renter was there. He had already rented the apartment.
I didn't hear because I was probably like, I don't know, 100 feet away behind a bush watching.
It was like, ooh, and they panicked.
And then seen the door open, we heard a lady scream, and then the door closed. I walked in and they had a guy tied up on the floor with a telephone cord, and he had like a big old kitchen knife, yelling and screaming at him, going through his wallet. And then kind of just sat there for a minute, and I was like, I just said, let's go. And then we left. We stole money, guns, clips, drugs, paraphernalia, and then shoved them in bags and then left. I guess my co-defendant got caught or pulled over or something. I don't even know what happened, but he told on everybody, so.
And they all pretty much dubbed her the ringleader because she knew where the house was. She said, hey, let's go over there.
I had 6 Class A felonies pending.
They wanted to try Starcia as an adult. And charges like that as an adult get you 15 years or more, if not a life sentence for a home invasion.
I thought that if I was going to change my life or if I wasn't going to end up in prison, then now is my time to get my crap together and I guess make the first step to trust somebody.
Well, she asked me to come and see her. She was already under arrest, and she was confined at the juvenile center, the youth service center in Tumwater here. So I went to see her on duty.
He asked me what happened, and I told him. He told me that I need to tell the truth and not lie about it, and it can be the first step to my new beginning.
Basically, I told her at that time that this is a fork in the road of your life, and you have to choose, and I'm not going to make that choice for you. Here's what I'll tell you. If you run, you're going to run forever.
My mom had come, but every time she came, she was just high and had made jokes about, look, the car's right there, we could just leave.
If you choose to stand, I'll stand there with you and walk you through this, no matter where it goes.
He encouraged me that if I told the truth and was honest, that he would stick by me no matter what my sentence was.
And she ended up pleading to her charges, which were pretty significant for a juvenile, for anyone.
So they told her they would try her as a juvenile and offered her the deal for juvenile life.
Being at 14 or 15, at the time, she was slotted to be in juvenile until she was 21.
I spent 214 days in detention. I didn't really know what was going on.
I imagine the first year that she was there was probably pretty bad.
You take an assessment test when you first get there, and they tell you what your reading level is and what your math level is, and mine were really low. I had like a 3rd grade reading level and maybe a little bit higher math, but they were really bad for being 15.
Okay, go ahead and take your shoes out, please. Now, you're still dealing with a street kid that still wants to manipulate and wants to get what they want for themselves, and it's usually a survival mode. Not so much the criminal mind, it's just that they don't trust anybody.
Everything was new to me, and I don't know, it was just a mess.
You know, because they tell you when to take a shit, they tell you when to get up, they tell you when to eat.
Go ahead and have a seat.
And if you look at one of the guards wrong or anything, they get an attitude with you, and then you're singled out.
They don't want to listen to the rules. Rules to them in their life a lot of times are non-existent, or they don't have to listen because the parents don't listen.
Being she has part of her mom and part of me in her, I could see her running her mouth to the staff.
I was angry, but I mean, I was just using that to cover up sad, being depressed, being frustrated, and I don't know, all of my issues, so. And then I went to Nacelle.
It's a place where you could come to change, and if you want to make something of it, you can.
It's a JRA facility, Juvenile Rehabilitation Administration. It's like basically a juvenile prison.
It doesn't look like a jail, and I think that's one of the good things about Nacelle Youth Camp is it doesn't look like a prison.
At Nacelle, I had burned a lot of bridges. When I first got there, I was angry and fighting and cussing people out. I was far from a role model resident there.
Most people, they get put in that system, and if they have no support system from the outside, their family or whatever, they're going to have nothing in there.
This is the Nacelle Youth Camp Visitor Center. Families come on weekends to visit with their family members that are here.
A lot of people can do things for kids that don't take much investment if they're willing to step out for it.
Today I got arrested, I wrote her counselor a letter and asked if we could have correspondence. And they let us, and we wrote every week.
Those things for people, even in the adult system, something from the outside, something that they still feel that there's a place for them out there, you know, that somebody cares for them.
You feel like you're abandoned.
I would just take her a burrito, go sit and talk with her.
I had to kind of learn how to have a healthy relationship. I didn't really know what that looked like. I didn't know that you could trust people and talk about your life and talk about stuff that happened at home.
If she's going to make that change, I'm going to stand behind her, and I'm going to do it as a police officer.
And so I would be telling him, venting, and just telling him what was going on, and he would tell me that, like, in the grand scheme of life, that little stuff isn't going to matter in 10 years.
I come from a pretty violent place, being a kid where I was at, and the connection that I had was I was able to share with her that you can get out of that you can get away from it. And it may take one individual or however many to help you, but there are people out there that want to help you, and she bought into that.
When I got to Nacelle, I had the best counselor, Jennifer Koheiser. She knew that I had so many deep-rooted issues and like started baby steps with me, and she made sure that she followed through with everything she said she was going to do, and slowly I learned to trust her.
And she was able to open up to me and share a lot of things, and that gave me opportunities to get her help and talk her through those things in a way to drop some of that from her plate.
DBT was being used in a lot of the living units. DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, developed by the University of Washington.
My name's Eric Troupin. I'm a professor here at the University of Washington.
If you're a person that flashes, you know, when you hear the word no, you go from 0 to 60, then I need to teach you a skill that helps you bring that down, because that's probably what is getting you in trouble.
She actually learned how to regulate some of her thoughts and behavior more effectively than she had when she was a younger person.
And you're just going to have to get used to kind of hearing no, because you're going to hear it a lot, and punching somebody when you hear it isn't going to be successful later in life.
She could see generations going all the way back to my mom of alcoholism and drugs, and really what saved her was God. When she's at an cell, I don't know, something sparked her and she found the love of God, and that was it.
There was a lady who came and she was a guest speaker, and she was a product of being raped, and her mom was like in a crazy ward, and she had like this crazy chaotic life that made me feel like, wow, I had a bad life, but it could have been way worse, and she still had overcome it.
There is a change, whether people want to call it character or spiritual or whatever. She found something that it changed her whole person.
And so I thought, man, if she could do it, and faith is how she did it, that's what I want.
She found a heart for people and herself instead of being that survival mode where she's trying to survive a horrific environment.
So that's when I guess you could say, turned a new leaf and accepted God into my life and started on that pathway.
From then on out, she decided she's only going to do good. That was her turning point, was her faith.
I wasn't so angry anymore, and then I worked on getting my stuff together and started setting goals.
She just woke up one morning and decided, you know what? I'm going to better myself. Every day I'm alive, I'm going to get better instead of worse.
Youth will often talk about what they want to do, their dreams and their hopes. What's unusual is finding someone who actually fulfills them.
It seemed at the time that my education was going to be the only difference between my parents and I.
I mean, just about any prison you go to, they got, the computer class, welding, auto body. Every one of them has some kind of college class that you could take to better yourself. I was really surprised to hear that the JRA didn't have anything, because that's when it counts. Not once you're 40 years old going to prison, let's learn a career. How about teaching them while they're kids?
You have to take a test before you do college classes to show what level of classes you should take out, but because you have to go off campus and at the college for that, I couldn't do it. So I wrote the president and the vice president of the community college at Grace Harbor, and initially they had said no.
You know, do I want people, filming my class? Do I want, is it an intrusion?
I actually decided that I was going to use no as a motivation. And even if the first couple people don't listen, you just keep telling people until you find someone that is willing to guide the way and be supportive.
And she was already making connections with people who might in fact be able to help her in the future.
So I got a whole bunch of letters from everyone that, like my counselor and other people, and had them write and say, just give her a chance.
Give them a chance, they won't disappoint you.
So she said, okay, well, you have a lot of cheerleaders and a lot of support teams, so I'm going to give you this opportunity.
I think it was, if I remember right, there was two of them that did it. We had a big TV here and a camera on the top of it, and the local college had the same setup.
I had hoped that I would be able to get my degree, and once I got past that first class, I knew that I could do it, so I did one class at a time, slowly but surely.
This is our central kitchen. The kids do food preparation. Residents have the ability to earn up to about $1.60 an hour. The kids on the Department of Natural Resources crew working 10 hours a day can earn maybe $15, $16 a day.
That was the most. And so I used all the money that I had worked on for school.
College classes, we don't have a way to fund that. It's not basic education.
I did one class at a time for a lot of years.
What happened is she was moved to Echo Glen.
Even though I took that one at Nacelle, when I got to Echo Glen, it was like starting all the way back over at square one.
The system in itself is, I would just say, robotic. We have certain rules and we do this stuff, but the people in the system is what made this work.
The cook at Echo Glen, the chaplain at Echo Glen.
She used to call me Wayne Chum. She'd go, Wayne Chum, I'm going places and I'm gonna take you with me. And I'm going, yeah, you gotta get out of Echo Glen first. That was our joke.
She was interacting on a much more regular basis with people who really were kind and supportive to her and didn't want anything from her.
She beat herself up a lot with the education piece, and I'm going, Starcia, it is what it is. You missed out on so much, studying habits, going to school and stuff like that. and it's like blocks in a cube that's got to be built on. The foundation is set, and then you start building blocks. You're putting bricks in there, and you miss that. So that's why you got a roof that's sitting on the floor.
It kills me she had to do all that time. Kills me to waste her whole high school years locked up.
I get this blank look on her face like, whoa, I missed it. I missed a whole cube out of my life.
No dances, no high school, nothing, locked up. And that right there is enough to mess a kid up in the head.
The biblical stories, I would use those as examples and show how they endured, and because they endured and because they trust God, that it came out in their favor.
If she was safe and she had a place that was okay to be, then she was working hard and she was trying to change.
I first met Starcia when we were doing a project at Echo Glen, and we asked for volunteers from the youth who would want to talk to us. She was a great person to interview in terms of describing what her experiences were, the pros and cons of her experiences with the mental health system.
She ended up asking Echo Glen to send her to school. And basically they said, all we owe you is a high school, diploma.
But like her, she always excelled or tried to drive further than what was just acceptable.
So she goes to the principal and said, don't sign my diploma. And I'm going, what? And she goes, yeah, don't sign my diploma, because once you sign my diploma, my education is basically over.
She talked and finagled and got it to where they said, okay, fine, if you could talk a school into letting you take some classes where it doesn't cost the state anything, you can do it.
So she made some contacts through email, and Oprah Winfrey never wrote her back, and she said, I need to kick this up. So Governor Gregoire, how is this person getting access to the internet?
She had to fight tooth and nail to do the college stuff at Echo Glen, and if it wasn't for a few staff members there backing her up, it would never happen.
The teacher that actually let her on the internet was retiring. And at his retirement party, he fessed up to it, and I'm going. And Starcia knew it all the time, and she just got this look on her face like, I didn't know that.
But I saw a lot of people along the way in the system step forward, and everyone that I've talked to stepped forward because of who Starcia was, and they could see that she was driving forward to change.
I just, kind of going around making sure that, she's in line and not going to run into anything. It's kind of like teaching a daughter how to drive. And, you're on the brakes and the accelerator the whole time. Can't do nothing about it because you're on the passenger side of the car.
All of Starcia's friends are all newfound friends that are all going in the right direction. She doesn't want to associate, talk to, anybody from the past that doesn't have a positive way of life, period.
When she first left here, and the kids that knew her or knew of her, she was like a celebrity.
Those people are more of a family to her than her family is.
Sometimes you gotta plant, you gotta water, you gotta sow, and then someone else down the line will be able to pick the fruit.
She was scheduled out, and I went to see her one last time, and she was going to a foster home in Spokane.
Because that was a pilot program that she did over there. They put her in foster care a year before she was supposed to get out, let her get back into society.
Yeah, I worked at Lowe's in the garden department and went to school at Spokane Community College.
I got out of prison April 29th of 2008, and by May 2nd I was over there in Spokane with permission from my DOC officer, of course, to go see Starcia.
Every time we talk about transitioning, moving in the community, she always used to say, don't you forget about me. Don't you forget about me.
I heard from her a couple times, and then for about 3 months I didn't hear from her.
And although there was long periods of time that I had no contact with Starcia, every once in a while I would get an email from her, just checking in.
About the third month I got a phone call, and she told me that she was a junior living in the dorms at WSU. And that piece came from those godparents that got her set up in that.
My name is Ernie Hensley, and we're here in Spokane Valley. When Starcia came into our life, she was living in a foster home, and she had the ability to go to church. And she also had the ability to go to the women's Bible study.
And that's where I met my godmom, Christy.
Christy came home and she says, you know, Starcia's going to need a place to live. And she has been accepted to go to WSU. She's almost got her AA degree done, and she's done that all while being incarcerated.
The more I told them about it, the more they're interested about my life and how I got there.
And I got to meet her, and my wife and I looked at each other and said, we want to help this young woman. In fact, I want to see what she will do if we actually take her in as one of our own.
Christy and Ernie Hensley, those people are God sent. You know, and they love Starcia with all their heart. She's the daughter they never had.
And she calls me Dad, and I call her my daughter.
When I moved in with my godparents in July, I was only there for a month before I came to WSU.
My wife helped her go down there to get her classes arranged.
All the stuff that Starcia didn't have a clue of what to do, they pretty much took her by the hand and said, this is what you do and this is how you do it.
My major is criminal justice.
I'm going to go get my degree in criminal justice, and I'm going to work with kids.
It sounds kind of corny, but to kind of be that one person, hopefully, in someone's life that I didn't have growing up.
There's great things within the system that have helped her. There's some things that need improvement. And I think if we take a look at those, you know, she can help highlight some of those things.
I think that there's a lot of room for improvement to prepare kids for going into the community.
I mean, Starcia came out, and when she was done on her 21st birthday, she was done. There was no transition to, here's how you get medical insurance. You know, here's how you provide for yourself. It's kind of like, adios.
Most of their lives, they're told that they're failures, that they're not going to make it, that they're felons.
And one of the big concerns that she has is that when these kids come out of the juvenile system, generally what they will do is they'll go right back into the environment that they came from because they don't know anything else.
My name is Nicholas Loveridge. I'm a professor of political science, and I'm a Regents professor.
He ended up just taking her in full-time for all of her work study.
And I work for the Division of Governmental Studies and Services in Johnson Tower.
My name is Ruth Self. I am the administrative assistant for the Division of Governmental Studies and Services. We help out the different government agencies, both local and state, and we help out the graduate students by getting the experience, and we get a lot of good research out of it.
I'm Erica Christensen. I'm the student regent, and I'm also a graduate student in the political science department. Starcia's background gives her a lot of experience with what the court system looks like. She knows a lot of officers personally that are really good friends of hers.
And I think she recognizes the value of all that help and the value of what these programs have put in place that have helped her.
So I said, oh, you need to work on our project because I can see that you can read information that we're missing. We probably should be taking into account as we develop our understanding.
She has surpassed a number of the master students in the program. It really has moved her up to the level of being a peer.
She has a drive that you got to catch up with her. You know, you can't just stay back and wait, or you're going to get left in the dust.
One of the comments that was made to me that really struck me from one of the caseworkers was, I sure hope you can talk some sense into her when she goes off into college. You know, we'll go ahead and let you work with her, but talk some sense into her because there are things that she is never going to be able to do because of her record.
Most people, I think, that come from that situation can't ever really escape it.
And I just looked him straight in the eye and I says, you know, I am not going to be one to tell Starcia what she can or cannot do.
In our area of research, this is a term we use as resilience, that some portion of every disadvantaged group of people will find a way to be successful despite.
And it was kind of funny because one day we were sitting here at the house and she was talking about, you know, if the laws are an obstacle, I want to do something to help change the law. And I says, cool. I just happen to know someone who's probably one of the best in the state in that regard.
My name is Jim Hargrove, and I'm a state senator from the Olympic Peninsula.
There's this guy that I want you to meet, and he's a senator.
He called me about this young lady. She was facing the potential for not being able to use her degree because of the juvenile record she had.
He says, well, Ernie, I would really like to meet her, and it happens that I'm going to be over in Pullman for the Highland Games.
So I was with a kilt on, throwing cabers. And so Starcia came by to the event and met me at the event.
Jim was wearing this gosh awful looking, it almost looked like a tablecloth.
So the first time she met me, I had a skirt on.
I knew a week later I was going to be over at Starcia's award for the Governor's Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee, Spirit of Youth.
They really like someone to have been in JRA, that's been out and been successful.
And she was the unanimous selection for 2009.
And that room was full of people from JRA and all other parts of the system.
And then we walked over to the Capitol, and I got my plaque from the governor. She said that when she was young, she wanted to work with vulnerable youth. She said, Starcia, you're more qualified than I ever was.
And she says, you know, Senator Hargrove was going to be here, but he wanted you to know that we're going to work on some legislation one of these days, and she hands the governor this picture.
That's one of her treasured possessions, is Senator Hargrove in a kilt.
Shortly after that, Jim started formulating the idea for the legislation that he would try to put forward to help juveniles get their records sealed.
We didn't have any process for allowing Class A felonies to have their records sealed, no matter how they performed.
Senate Bill 6561.
But on the other hand, even if the record is sealed and they ever do anything else, that whole record comes to light again. So it's not like a pardon that wipes it all clean, okay?
Dr. Lovrich was over in Olympia doing a lot of work with the legislators at that point.
My name is Nicholas Lovrich. I'm a professor of political science and criminal justice at Washington State University.
But one of the things that Starcia decided was that she was going to go on a mission to help get this law passed.
Yeah, Senator Hargrove was looking to do this, and as he says, you need a face on the bill.
Taking a chance is always risky, but there's only one way to find out that the risk is worth it, and I'm here to tell you that I'm worth it.
He had no success story to show.
He said, the way this is going to have to work is it has to be bipartisan.
You need to talk with not just Democrats, but Republicans too.
And she hit it off with Senator McCaslin, and then she met Val Stevens and other members, conservative members who normally don't support this kind of measure.
My name is Casey Truppen. I work as an attorney for Columbia Legal Services.
Something Casey told me, he said, Starcia, for 11 years we've been working on getting this bill passed.
It's been a long battle to give young people a second chance.
For lots of years people have worked on very similar things and nothing has went through.
I was somewhat skeptical that just one person was going to be able to make a big impact on something that had been so difficult to change, but I was quickly proven wrong.
Every chance I got, I'd go to Olympia and then talk to as many people as I could in a day, all day long. Nick and I would be there from as soon as everyone would walk in there at 8 until we'd leave at like 6 or 7 at night, and then I would fly back and come to classes and play catch up.
If there's an obstacle, she will look at it with the resources that are available to her, and she'll try to find a way through that obstacle.
Kind of like a freight train.
She goes after legislators who time and time again say, I'm not going to vote for your bill. I love what you're doing. I think you're exceptional, but I'm not going to vote for your bill. And indeed, at the end of the day, some of these people come around and they actually vote for her bill. They support her.
Well, I think she kind of looks at it from the perspective of, from where I've come from, I'm going to be worried about this. You know, that's kind of how I think she looks at it. You know, it's like, what could happen to me now, you know?
At worst now, people will say, well, Starcia is one of a kind and not everybody is like her, but nobody ever comes out of a meeting with Starcia with a feeling that young people don't deserve a second chance.
Not too many people have the capacity to make these connections to legislators that she does.
She was very real, and she was very open with people in the hearing process, you know, when people ask her questions about where she'd been, what she'd done, you know, what she went through, and the decisions, bad decisions she's made. And so I think that was actually helpful. In a certain way, it's kind of refreshing around here, because it seems like so many people's testimony and are almost performances, you know, that we get. And so we get a little jaded watching that.
The 6561 bill, she was really concerned about that, and I told her, Starcia, I can help you.
Hi, my name is Daniel Ague.
It's not your fault how you were raised. You can't, you know, they can't hold that against you. You had no say over it. You had no control. You're a kid. It's my fault. Your mom's fault. It's not your fault. It's our fault.
I believe that I am largely responsible for Starcia being locked up.
My fault. Took a little while, to figure all that out in my head, but I haven't done any methamphetamine since 2004 when I got arrested last time, because it ruined Starcia's life basically, so I'll never do that shit again.
She's testified she worked the bill in the House too, and I think it sailed out of the Senate unanimously, but it ran into a little bump in the House. In the committee over there were some people concerned about the type of offenses.
The bill almost got crushed in the House, and then I was bawling my eyes out, and I was so sad. And they're like, wait, there might be this tiny little kernel of hope.
Maybe meeting some of the leadership of the Democratic caucus kept it on the agenda when it could have died in committee, and that was her doing.
It didn't pass, and then some conversations happened, and then it passed.
And the governor signed it into law.
Starcia did this to help others and not really herself, but she recognized that it needed to happen based on her experiences.
The Senate bill that was passed would give her the ability to be pardoned, say 5 years after the completion of her incarceration. And she wants to work with kids now.
If you have a Class A felony, there's like 3 pages of stuff. You can't work with kids, the elderly, the public. You can't.
So I think it just kind of affects her whole entire life, and it's holding her back when she should really be allowed to soar right now.
It was like, what else can you do? You've been rehabilitated, you've went above and beyond. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are for people who do more than a year in JRA and end up with their degrees, but I haven't heard of very many stories, so I don't even know what else I could do to prove to anybody.
I'm George Yanakis. I'm attorney at Team Child, a civil legal services firm here in Seattle. Starcia contacted the National Juvenile Defender Center in Washington, D.C., who I'd been working with for years. One of the staff called me and said, well, what can we do to help this young lady? And I said, well, I think the only thing we could probably do is get a pardon.
We're calling to order the September quarterly hearing of the Governor's Clemency and Pardons Board.
I'm John Turner. I'm police chief for the city of Snohomish. Been a member of the Pardons Board for 6.5 years. There are 5 members appointed for 4-year terms by the governor.
Okay, we're going to take the Ague case next.
It's called a relief valve to allow extraordinary circumstances to come into play when someone may be worthy of release.
They recommend the governor grants the pardon.
And I'm proud to represent Starcia Ague, A-G-U-E, this morning in her request for a pardon for crimes she committed when she was 15, over 8 years ago. I had hoped I could take credit for preparing all the witnesses, but I can't. They all spoke from the heart. They all knew what they wanted to say. All I did was facilitate their presentations and introduce them. Due to time constraints, I would ask you to allow Senator Hargrove to come up and address you at this time. They all started with their relationship with Starcia with some degree of skepticism about her.
And from my perspective, what people say they believe isn't as important as their actions after what they say they believe. And in her case, the proof is in the pudding. The fruit is there. We have seen all of her actions through the awards that have been discussed, through everything she's done to excel, show that her life is really changed.
And all of them talked about what it was that transformed them into believing in her.
And you asked before somebody if they'd be willing to put their reputation on it. Well, on TVW, I'm putting my reputation in play here for Starcia and fully recommending her for a pardon.
It made me feel like I have the possibility to get a pardon.
They heard from people who had seen her transformation firsthand.
I sit on many hiring committees because I have a pretty good set of antenna for who's the real deal and who isn't. This lady's the real deal.
If she makes a commitment, she's going to do it. If she makes a promise, you can rely on her 100%. That's the real deal.
We need her in Washington. We need her to be licensed to practice with youth at risk and offending youth. And that's all I can say.
There's one gentleman on the board that kept coming back and talking about it's really important to see longevity.
Insufficient time has passed
after completion of your sentence. And Starcia just burst out in tears and leans over her shoulder and says, I'm not feeling good about this, because she'd only been out like 2 years. And I leaned over and I told her, I says, you know, God didn't bring you this far along to just dump you off. We once had a foster child that went the opposite direction, and it was a hard lesson for us to learn many years ago. 30 years ago actually is when it was. The real issue is she rehabilitated, and is she going to turn around and go back to her former life? I'm absolutely convinced that that was not the case. I understand the importance of time from release and things like that. I think this girl has been on a path since the day she turned her life around in JRA. That's where she started. Here's where she is. This is a person that's gone through 7 years of commitment following the path to getting to the place of rehabilitation, and is in fact deserving of a pardon as a result of that. And I can think of no greater reward for our society and for those who work for juvenile rehabilitation, and for Starcia along the way as well.
We even had a law enforcement officer who had first arrested Starcia, I think, back when she was 12 or 14.
My whole goal with her, and what I started from, was a connection with this kid that I had some hope for because of her willingness to accept what she had done. And the simplest thing is, what most people don't understand that I learned, is that you don't have to do much, just do something.
I'll see a lot of juveniles or even adults that play the game, that go through the treatment, that go through the rules. They attend all of their punishment hearings and all of that stuff, and they have to do so many hours or whatever, but it's just to get through it.
She left the system and went to a foster home in Spokane. I will tell you, at that time I was concerned, because once they're out, if they have problems, they go back. I attempted to call her several times, and this was about a 3-month period that I never received a call from her. And she was supposed to go to school and get a job and all of that. And being in Spokane, that's a long ways for me. So I wasn't able to visit. I had talked to her several times, and then there was no contact. My concern was that she went back. About the end of the 3 months, I got a phone call. And I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's, guess where I'm at? Well, I don't know. I was thinking back to where you shouldn't be, but... and she told me that she was a junior at WSU. Living in the dorms, and I have to tell you that it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
It's an honor to be a part of that with her, because I think she's going to go a long way, and a lot further than I've ever expected.
I tell you, as a law enforcement officer, this is one time in a career. I've never seen this before, so that's why I'm here.
You have the enforcer on the street that goes and testifies for someone for a pardon. It didn't release her from her crime. It didn't release her from her punishment. What it does is it releases from following her the rest of her life.
If somebody asked me, would I bet my career on this kid? No, I'd bet my life on it.
It makes me thankful that when he gave me his card that I called him, and he really followed through with everything he said he was going to do.
A wise man once told me, if you give mercy, you will receive it at somewhere. So I'm just asking you for her.
And then, of course, we give the opposition a side if there's anyone in opposition to the petitioner's request. But let me ask you a tough question. The prosecutor has weighed in this case, and the prosecutor is opposed any clemency or pardon here.
Mr. Yanakis, have you seen that letter?
Yes, I have,
Okay.
and I've talked personally with Ed Holm about this. And when I originally approached Ed, I said, you know, Ed, I'm going to move for a pardon on this young lady. He was there when the governor awarded the Spirit of Youth Award. And he said, yeah, this will be no problem. My office will support it. Well, I sort of dropped the ball on that. I didn't follow up with Ed until Ed called me and said, you know, George, My office is overwhelmingly opposed to this.
I've read that letter, sir, and the way it was presented to me is it's not an opposition, it's a statement of that one of the individuals involved in this is still incarcerated.
So we did some background on the co-defendants and found out that both of them had extensive criminal history when they pled guilty to these charges, as opposed to Starcia, who had no criminal history.
If I did that in society, where I took every kid, and no matter what they were involved in, I treated them exactly the same as enforcement, that would be unfair. And for me, that's why the system has its checks and balances and has its different sentencing standards and has a split between juvenile and adult and all of those issues involved.
I have an issue with this incident because being so involved from the start of this, every single person involved in this issue, I know through law enforcement.
What I was describing is that the crime that Starcia was involved in involved individuals that they delineated as victims that were the same type of people that Starcia's parents were.
Working the street, there is an abnormal normality to the drug world.
They called the cops, but they took all the dope out of their house in the trailer that they were cooking dope in away from the house before they decided to call the cops.
It's a networking, but it's thieves among thieves.
That does not justify what was done, and I would never say that because I believe that, but not everyone here has been made responsible.
We try on the board to be very respectful of victims because the prosecutor oftentimes will be the representative for the victims.
I have to oppose it because the victim in this case opposes the pardon. So I said, well, Ed, okay, I appreciate your telling me this and giving me a heads up. So Starcia contacted the victim in the case, and she said, oh no, I'm not opposed to this. I would support it. In fact, I'll write a letter on your behalf.
Can you give me a summary of what the letter says?
Yes, it talks about the fact that Starcia and Paula have talked. They've talked about the incident. She's forgiven Paula, Starcia for the actions they have related. They both are very interested in working with youth.
She is really wanting to get to work with young people sooner rather than later.
The felony on my record is a barrier that will continue to limit my ability to accomplish more, to contribute more to society, to help empower the youth of Washington. And I'm asking you now for the opportunity to pursue my dreams and realize my career goals. Please recommend my pardon to the governor.
We oftentimes hear from many, many petitioners that they've found the Lord, they've changed their life, and we're happy that they have, but that's not necessarily the sole factor of consideration.
But if you really do, measure up and follow through and admit your mistakes, there is a possibility for you to be pardoned and move on with your life.
Is there any discussion or a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we recommend to the governor that she grant the petition.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded that we recommend the governor grant the petition for a pardon. Let's have some discussion to identify the extraordinary circumstances.
Because when the legislature created our board, they basically said we are to make up our mind based on extraordinary reasons. The legislature did not define extraordinary and left that to the members of the board.
One factor I think is extraordinary that really needs to be brought out even more is your tenacity and instrumental leadership in getting Senate Bill 656 passed.
Saying you did a huge public service by working on that bill, and we know it wasn't easy because we see so many people coming here from charges when they were a juvenile, and it just allows one more process so that everyone doesn't have to come here.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion that we recommend the governor grant the pardon, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously.
That doesn't mean that if we make a recommendation that the recommendation is going to be followed. And rightly so, because it is the governor's reputation that puts on the line if she grants that.
Actually, Christine Gregoire has given the least amount of pardons ever in the state of Washington so far.
I had told Starcia that this is not a quick procedure that the governor had no time frames within which he had to issue a pardon or grant the pardon.
It's the waiting game. The last person who got a pardon took 8 months to hear back from the governor.
But I suspected that we'd hear sometime in early December. When that deadline passed, I told Starcia that I was sure we're going to hear right around Christmas, because that's when executives often grant pardons or clemency. When that passed, I told her I'm sure we're going to hear before the start of the legislative session in early January. And then we finally did hear in mid-February that the governor granted Starcia the pardon.
You have a special gift, my friend, and I, in granting you what I did, believe in you, as do so many people who've been affiliated with you. You have so many people who believe and support you, so we're banking on you making sure some folks out there see the light through your eyes and see that there's a great future for them, and you'll give them the inspiration they need and deserve.
Well, I won't let you down.
I know you won't. I know you won't.
It's something I would, again, do over again 100 times. Involving Starcia, it was that rewarding to me.
It's very important for those workers in the JRA system to be able to say, we got one through. We got one we can point to. We can learn from this experience. Now, how can we find the next one?
We have to figure out how other Starcias can be discovered and nurtured and helped.
There are kids out there like Starcia that need Starcia. They need the wisdom that she's gained over all these years. They need the direction that she has.
My name is Starcia Ague, and first of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for coming up here, even though most of you guys don't know who I am.
And she will make changes for many people in the juvenile system, those kids that she has a heart for.
It will be changed for the better. Believe that.
There's always something or somebody there that is going to be in your way, and the reality is that you just have to be willing to work.
People won't believe that anyone from that kind of a background could get to her level, and they want to know how she did it. Well, there's a lot of beautiful people that worked with her along the way.
That's one of my jewels in GRA, when I think that life is, what is life? You know, the scripture says it's a vapor. It's here and it's gone tomorrow. When you meet people like Starcia, you go, it's worth it. It was well worth it. And if I had it to do again, I would.
People took a chance on me, and they believed in me when nobody else would. It helped me to feel good about myself. It helped me to be able to feel like I could set goals and accomplish them. And as basic and simple as it sounds, those things really helped.